Hi, good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and special thank you to Vivian for this very meaningful invitation today. Oh yes, I'm supposed to do this. Let's try. Yes. When we think about business for good, what do we think about? Philip's already touched on some of that. And coming from a corporate background myself, things such as ESGs, sustainability frameworks, responsible governance, all that comes to mind. But today, okay, that's better. But today I wear a different hat. I now work in the social impact space with underserved women. And when I think of business for good, what comes to mind are actually all these little businesses which we are surrounded by. Mom and pop shops, street vendors, even women who come to your house doing your lashes and your nails. They are all parts of this informal economy. Okay, now I know why that was there. They are the invisible majority. To put this into perspective, micro businesses, sorry, I shouldn't have touched it, or is it this?
No, you just don't have to stand too near.
Okay, so to put this into perspective, micro businesses are actually the backbone of the Malaysian economy, contributing to 75% of businesses. The informal economy actually contributes to 26% of Malaysia's GDP. And there are 1.37 million informal entrepreneurs recorded at the moment. And from the last literature which I went through, that number has actually doubled today. So these people matter. These informal businesses matter. And they deserve a seat at the table. They need to be a part of conversations of business for good. Why do they matter? They are beneficiaries of business for good, but they themselves, informal businesses themselves, are forces of good. Because when they thrive, their families thrive, their communities thrive, and the Malaysian economy thrives as well. Why is it then that their businesses are not sustainable? It is not a lack of effort, it's a lack of access. There are structural barriers, there are community gaps. They have limited access to business tools, to business skills, to business mentoring, as well as to digital tools. They have limited access to education. Many of them are educated up to secondary level. They have limited access to fundings. They don't qualify. They are blacklisted. They are bankrupt. And actually, in some cases, no thanks to their husbands, they are bankrupt. Because husbands registered their businesses in their wives' names. And when the business failed, the wife is left with that. And then she's expected to start a business which she is not able to qualify for simply because she can no longer access the funds. On top of this, we have women holding multiple roles. And these roles include the care economy, which we all know is an unpaid economy and under-supported. So it is this lack of access that is creating the women's inability to upscale their businesses. How do we help? Women of Will was founded in the year 2016 to serve women in the bottom 40% category. These are women who we focus on earning incomes of less than 2,750 ringgit. That is the poverty line index in Malaysia. We serve the urban poor and we serve the rural poor as well. States in which we work in are Kuala Lumpur and Selangor, and the poorer states of Sabah, Kedah, Perlis, as well as Kelantan. To date, we have reached out to over 3,000 women, 60 plus communities, and through our programs, 221,000 plus lives have been impacted. I'm not putting this up purely for the numbers, but it is to show you of the multiplier effect of working with one woman. Because when you work with one woman, that multiplies to the family and to the rest of the community itself. These are women with real businesses, real families, and real needs. But unfortunately, they lack the access to safety nets, as well as access to growth pathways that many businesses are actually privileged to have. What is our approach? What is our development pathway? It is very much rooted at the community level. It is rooted at the grassroots level, where before we commence any program, it is critical that we conduct a needs analysis. It is critical, absolutely, to understand the needs, the gaps, as well as the resources of community, even before you implement any program, so that it can be catered to and so that it can be relevant. There is no point shoving down a uniform approach, which may not work for different communities. There are 3 phases of our program. In the first phase, we develop women as individual entrepreneurs. Here, they are given a business capital loan of 3,000 ringgit, of which 20% needs to be repaid into a community fund. They're also given entrepreneurship development skills so that they are able to run their own businesses. Second phase of the program is where a selected number of women are then upskilled as community leaders. And here, they actually develop programs within the community and empower their own communities themselves. In the third phase, this is where we support the communities in developing community businesses as well as community resources. For example, a community kitchen, community sewing center, as well as an IT hub for teenagers. We have learned that it is not enough just to work with individuals. We need to work with communities because these communities form the ecosystems that support the women in building their businesses. What are success factors? Long-term engagement. You cannot shift mindsets. You cannot shift behavior overnight. It is critical to be engaged long-term in the community to impact change. As an example, we worked in this community many years ago. There was like very strong political as well as very strong racial differences. And when we ran programs, Camp A would come on one week and Camp B would come on another week, and we could never get them together in one room. It took us at least 4 years to bring them together. And today, the women in that community are the ones pushing for inclusion on all levels. The second success factor is local-led solutions, which I've spoken about. It is absolutely critical to understand who you are talking to and to actually understand what they need. I'll share one example with you of somebody actually not understanding how the community thinks and what they need. A sewing program was actually implemented where women could come and learn how to sew and actually go home with a sewing machine with the thinking that they would start a sewing business. But guess what the women did? They all sold the sewing machines. Because why? It was an easier way of getting money. That is a complete lack of insight into the mindset of women in these communities. The third success factor for us is our repayment system. 20% going back into community fund, and with this fund, the women themselves run programs and implement projects to the benefit of their communities. This is really powerful because it actually develops ownership, it develops pride, and it develops involvement in any activities which are implemented. Our economic impact. On average, we show 70% increase in income across all programs, 53% increase in savings across all programs, and 100% of the women move out of the poverty line index. Beyond these shifts, there are other important shifts. The women become more confident, standing taller, speaking prouder at the end of programs. There's shifts in decision-making, from survival decision-making to strategic decision-making. And there are shifts in how they care for their community, because they are now able to better care for themselves. They can now look after the rest of the community as well. In terms of community, we have upskilled 181 community leaders. We have run 61 community days. This is important because in our community days, we don't limit it to the women whom we work with, but we open it up to the rest of the community, children, men, the elderly, other NGO partners, everybody is invited. And what this means is that nobody is left out. in particular men, who are often very threatened by our program, as well as the success of the women. And this is what I mean about understanding local insights and catering to that. 47 communities activated. This means that there are community leaders running programs in those communities. And over 322,000 in community funds being utilized to create community programs, such as a community toilet, a waste disposable area, as I was saying, an IT hub, tuition center, even a gazebo and a reflexology garden for the elderly. And the last of which we are extremely proud is the formation of a women's leadership NGO, which was actually formed last year by one of our women, bringing together all the community leaders. And just last year, they applied for a grant with the Ministry of Women, and which they received successfully, and they are running the program now. So the women whom we upskill have now become mini women's of Will. I love this. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "A woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong it is until it's in hot water." Our women have certainly been in hot water. And we have so many stories of success and resilience. My favorite is Bunama, who used to sell ice-blended drinks, just ice and syrup. 2 years in the program, she comes running to us with a surprise. She bought a second-hand car with cash. I'm sorry, I don't know how many of us in this room can actually do that. Absolutely incredible. Sadly, our strongest story of resilience came during the pandemic, at a time when 580,000 Malaysians moved from the middle income category down to the lower income category. Our women, on the other hand, moved upwards to the middle income category simply because they leveraged on the digital skills which we had taught them, so that they could continue marketing and their businesses at this time and during lockdowns. That is truly resilience at its strongest. Misha Romley is another woman who embodies empowerment of women and empowerment of communities. She came into our program with one business and grew it into multiple businesses successfully. She transformed from being an individual entrepreneur to a community leader, and she's now a change maker because Misha spearheaded the formation of the Women's Leadership NGO. Apart from that, Misha is now giving back to society, volunteering at multiple organizations such as Religious Relief, Children's Center, and a whole host of other NGOs. And she is also impacting change at the core of it in the community where she lives, taking on formal roles within the community which were once traditional, the seats of males. This is the first time there has been a woman taking a formal role in the community in which she lives in. And I will share more on Misha after this. So you will ask, what is pushing all this? What is making this impact happen? It is partnerships. This ecosystem is absolutely critical to us all. Funding partners enable women to start and scale. Corporate partners allow women to gain access to skills. Academic partners help us validate as well as to verify what is working and what is not working. NGO and service partners enable us to expand our delivery, making it more holistic. We are able to introduce healthcare, we're able to introduce children's education, we are able to introduce nutrition, all with the help of our other partners. And women and communities are also part of this partnership. They are not just the beneficiaries, they are at the core of it all, and they are the co-creators. So what you see here is multiple partners. Everybody has a different role, but we all have one shared outcome. We are looking for impact. By the way, talking about partners, we have vacancies for lawyers as well. Okay. It is not enough to do good work. It is necessary to validate the work. And this is where our collaboration with Monash is so useful to us, and it's priceless. In 2024, Monash assessed our program and validated its effectiveness in elevating poverty. This continues in 2026 with Monash, who's helping us assess the impact of our mentorship program. This collaboration truly puts us in the front seat because it gives us credibility in our work. It helps us ensure that our programs can be improved continuously, and in time, it will inform policy making as well as future program design. And this is key to today's conversation because if small businesses are to be part of force of good, then the models which are supporting them had better be proven, measurable, and scalable. We started by talking about corporations and what we think of in business for good. We reframed it to include small businesses, both as beneficiaries as well as forces of good themselves. We spoke about women of will and how we empower not just individuals, but communities as well. And we spoke about partnerships, which brings us to this merging point. Impact cannot be created by one individual or one organization. It needs to be coordinated. It needs to be integrated. It is a partnership. The future for business for good is not inclusive. You do not simply stick those who you are hoping to serve at the end of the program. It takes a conscious effort to co-create it from the very onset. At community level, you need to include those whom you aim to serve, and at partnership level, you need to include stakeholders so that it becomes integrated. Only then will impact become sustainable as well as can it be magnified manifold. Thank you. And I would now like to share the video of Misha, which will actually encapsulate pretty much what I spoke about today. Thank you.
Saya tak nak anak cucu saya menghadapi apa yang saya dah lalui. Saya takkan biarkan anak-anak saya lapar. Itu satu yang saya pegang. Saya takkan biarkan dia orang lapar lagi. Akak Isyam binti Romli berasal dari Pulau Pinang, berumur 60 tahun, mempunyai 3 anak, seorang lelaki dan 2 perempuan, dan juga seorang cucu. Suami dah meninggal, akak terpaksa bekerja untuk membantu keluarga lah. Desakan hidup kan, orang kata kita kena korbankanlah apa cita-cita kita. Kalau sebut ibu tunggal, ramai orang akan memandang rendah pada golongan kami. Saya jadi buntu. Okey, sampailah saya dapat tahu peluang Woman of Will, ya, itulah satu permulaan orang kata saya nak keluar daripada masalah ini.
The B40 community in Malaysia is facing many challenges, especially the increase in cost of living and also access to basic human needs. Many of them are trapped in a cycle of poverty, and yet they're extremely strong and resilient, especially if they're given the right access to opportunities and resources. The goal here is not to fund the growth of their businesses, but more to set them on the right trajectory so that they are not reliant on other organizations or even WOW. The 3 words I would use to describe Kak Misha are ambitious, brave, and strong. She's really been instrumental in helping WOW reach out to women in not just her community, but also understanding the dynamics in her community as well as in communities in Malaysia. It was her that kept prompting us and saying, hey, you know, you're helping a lot of women entrepreneurs in the community. A lot of us are tailors, and we can sew really well. We just don't have the machineries. So, why don't you get some funding and open a sewing center for us? I can run it.
Masa itu, akak hanya menjahit guna mesin portable. Lama punya. Jadi akak nak beli mesin yang industri.
We were also receiving a lot of requests from partners to sew face masks and PPE for frontliners. There was a need, there was a demand, and we put that two together. She's the perfect example of the potential of a woman if given the right resources and support.
Untuk tahap ini memang dapatlah cita-cita akak tu. Dapat membantu wanita, dapat membantu masyarakat, akak dapat pulangkan balik pada komuniti. Itu memang satu kepuasan untuk diri akak.
One of the main things that we are looking at is how can we work more with our entrepreneurs to empower them and their communities. For the general public, we'd love to invite them to really support more mom and pop shops, buying products from the local entrepreneurs, and whatever support you give them goes a long way in helping them achieve their dreams.
Apa sahaja peluang perniagaan yang ada, kita ceburi, kita belajar. Orang katakan wanita ni boleh menggoncang dunia. Kena kuat.